we're back at you today
You're right.
with USA Savat. We just have a little bit of some trouble here trying to get some stuff done, but we're going to be touching base with President of USA Savat, Lieutenant Commander Patrick Gavin, and he's been dealing with USA Savat. Was a U.S. champion of Savat for many years, and apart from that. We have a lot of projects coming of age. Tomorrow we have the third annual Texas Stick Fighting Championship, which is out of a committee of USA Savat, which is known as a Gentleman's Stick Fighting Commission. And so stuff like that. If you guys got any questions, the number's going to be up on the wall. And any words of advice, Patrick?
Just say a little bit about the Texas or the Gentlemen's Stick Fighting Coalition. This was a really brilliant idea put together by Professor Boutron to make cane fencing more affordable. As it's done in France, it is often subsidized by their sports ministry, and they use hard sticks, and the equipment is quite expensive. For one person to have a full kit could be upwards of $300, usually around $500, and that prices it out of the market for most people. But by using padded sticks, action flex weaponry, brought down the price point quite a bit to put it within the budget of most people. Not only that, you make the game orders of magnitude safer when you are not dealing with hard sticks. Gentlemen's Stick Fighting Coalition, I mean, we're about health and safety. If you're not about that kind of safety, look up the Dog Brothers and go to one of their gatherings. But we do things for a reason, because the people who come to us, they have to go, the kids have to go to school Monday morning, the adults have to go to work Monday morning, and you can't really go to work with a face looking like Edward Norton from Fight Club and your hands all busted up.
You know, it's funny to say, because when we so Savat basically came into the U.S. more or less around 88, 89. The first association was the Texas Association of Savat, and as time progressed, USA Savat developed, and it became the governing body of Savat in '96. And we had a lot of competitions of the kick portion of it, the kick punch portion of it, which is known as Savat Boxe Française, the sport of the martial art of France. And we had a lot of U.S. championships. In fact, you were U.S. champion several times, and you represented the United States several times.
Won the Assault British Open back around 2000, 2001.
Sure. And what occurs is that the other sport is known as Lacan. And there was a lot of friends of ours that do Filipino martial arts, and we all came together about 4 years ago. Carlito Bonjoc, Ron Saturno, we had Roger Agabalos, all these great gurus, Michael Giron, Larry Orduño, we had Eric Buenaflor from San Antonio, and we all kind of came together to say, how are we going to have competitions? There's no competitions. We both have a similar sport. Can we all mix these sports together to get a better turn of events, have more competition? And we did that. We came up with some rules which we took from USA Boxing, Savat, of course, Lacan, the Bahalana groups from Michael Giron, and several other stick fighting groups, as well as
the Weekoff rules.
Of course, Alfredo Bandalan as well. So what happened was these rules came of age, and what was and what can be done, and what is respectable and what is not, what is a respectable strike. So we came of age with a set of rules that follow alongside the USA Savat's principles, and because we're underneath the Department of Licensing and Regulations here in the state of Texas, which a lot of people do not understand that, and right now Texas is the only state in the union that allows Savat competitions to be mandated. We were trying to pass Savat back in 2000, 2001 with California when it was a provisional sport, And unfortunately, they did not follow rules, and somebody got killed, and all of a sudden, there's no Savate in California, even though people would say that there is. But if, we have to understand one thing, it's about safety. And that's why you're here, that's when I'm here, that's what we're trying to do. There's a lot of kickboxing, Thai boxing matches around the state of Texas and around the United States that are not sanctioned. It's a lot of, they say, oh, we're going to have a kickboxing fight, and they go to somebody's gym, and basically people knock the crap out of each other. And there's no referees, sometimes there's money exchange, and it's basically an illegal bout.
Yeah.
Some commissions do not have the manpower to take care of them, but some commissions do have the manpower to take care of them, and sometimes they go underneath the radar, but when they do get found out, things get ugly for the person hosting them. So as a martial artist, understand the difference between a sanctioned event and an unsanctioned event.
That's very true. Where I spent a lot of my life in Ireland, there is a tradition among the itinerant people, the travelers as they're called. When I was a kid, they were called tinkers or knackers. In England, they call them pikers. There's a tradition of bare fist boxing, which in recent years has fallen into great disrepute. But every year they would have an annual bout, a bare knuckle bout, to decide who would be the king of the Irish gypsies, and that individual would reign for 1 year. This was always unsanctioned. They would descend on a small town somewhere in Ireland, north or south, usually the south. They would come out of nowhere. Thousands of people all of a sudden would show up, and there was no ring. The crowd was the ring. And it would go on until one man couldn't continue. Yeah. Unsanctioned bout. In the US, again, there's a great history of that. They called it underground fighting, or I've heard it called round ring fighting. I've heard it called boom battle, carnival type fighting. Unsanctioned, it's anybody can fight anybody. It's kind of probably what gave rise to Chuck Palahniuk's book Fight Club, and again the subsequent film. The reason why you have rules and sanctioning is to keep people from getting killed.
You're absolutely correct. I'm going to say hi to a couple of people. Hey, Tim, Wes, Gus, Cindy, Damon. I hope you guys are having fun. I hope you guys are enjoying it. If you guys have any questions, drop us a call. The number is 956-949-9500, or type in your question. But we're going to hit a lot of nerves, and I'm going to be talking straightforward why we mandate rules, because there's a lot of people within the martial arts that are unscrupulous, and they teach for the benefit of money in the wallet. And martial arts is to teach people to live in a better community, for them to be able to defend themselves. Pugilism is the same way. You learn it basically because you have to go to school and you have to cross another neighborhood at one particular time. And then all of a sudden now you're in the middle of the ring. So two things that we're going to talk about: training, and second, why we're doing this, right? And when we had Savate competitions, or box francais Savate competitions, to better explain that, USA Savate is open to all. Before the turmoil in Afghanistan and Iraq, we had an equivalent of 43 clubs. And then all of a sudden, for about a decade, we lost a whole generation gap, and that generation was from about 17-year-olds to about 30-year-olds. And of course, many of them were off protecting our freedoms, and they were called to duty. So we lost a lot of that young man sport. Now we're regaining that, and we're gaining that in movement. We see that in Chicago. We see that in some of the other clubs that are coming of age. But we have to give them a good direction, especially when they ask that they want to compete. And if you're going to compete, do it correctly. I don't care
Absolutely.
if it's Savate, if it's boxing under USA Boxing. If there's no apparent kickboxing association that's amateur in the state of Texas anymore. at least that not that I know of, but they're now they have a amateur MMA. Understand the difference. If you go to a gym to train and you ask the individual, I want to fight in the ring, be have a word and train for that. If you go in there and you have 2 weeks and they already have you sparring and getting you knocked around, go to another place, because the only thing you're going to be is going to be a meat sack for somebody else, and you're going to eventually become money for that person if he takes you somewhere. Really doesn't really care if you come out fine or not.
That's the kind of gym you were talking about. It's basically called a stable. If you have 3 or 4 dozen guys in it, maybe 10 or 12 of them might be competing, and the other 2 or 3 dozen are punching bags for the guys who are competing. That's the professional fight game. Okay. I'll just leave that professional fight game for another conversation. But when you're talking about amateurs, when you're trying to talk about participants, what is an amateur? From the Greek, it means somebody who does something for the love of doing it. Okay, and I'll tell you, if it's not fun, most people are not going to be doing it. And when it comes to arranging for competitions, where a lot of instructors who have their own clubs or commercial establishments, they want to hold down costs, and by God, I realize that it's not cheap to run a program, much less put on a show, put on an event. You got to front a lot of money that you might never see again, and you might not break even. Breaking even is in many cases the best you can hope for. But if to do it right, okay, you need to follow rules and have medical oversight. Yes, for competitions of USA Savate, we always need a board-certified physician there, MD or DO, just like USA boxing mandates. Not a lot of sport organizations do that. I don't know if the karate or taekwondo people do it, but you have an organization that respects the fact that, hey, people can get messed up doing this stuff. There's always a chance. And we always mandate a ring too, so the fight doesn't go into the crowd or people don't go tumbling over chairs. It takes money to do that. And there has to be kind of a tipping point of interest of people willing to, front some money to have such an event. Everybody wants to have these events. Hey, let's have a competition. Let's do this. Let's do that. Well, you can't create competitors on the head of a pin, and you cannot just whip up something out of nothing, because, like I said, even in the light contact, things happen. Murphy's Law, and you better be prepared for that, or in this country you're going to get sued out of existence.
There's something that we've talked about, and it's rules. People come out, and especially that I've heard, especially with the stick fighting tournament that we have and the other tournaments that are around, we have a lot of individuals that train in different arts, and which they use weapons as per se, and it's open to everybody. The first thing they say is, I train to kill. Really? We train to combat. Okay, go play a video game. Go continue looking at YouTube and continue playing your video game and continue mentally masturbating over what you're trying to do, because nobody here is trying to kill anybody. Here it's a sport. It's actually a fencing match.
Exactly.
And a lot of individuals do not understand that. And when you have an instructor that is training you to kill mentality, well, you're going to get hurt, number one, and you're probably going to be wearing some kind of orange jumpsuit somewhere, or you're going to be running around in a little padded room. And that's exactly what society wants. They want to see martial artists in some way go down and, as a violent sport. It's not violence. It's the controlling of violence, and you do martial arts for the love of yourself, the love of your community, the love of the people that are around you, and to better yourself. And there's a lot of people that do not understand that, and unfortunately they're out there teaching.
Absolutely. When you don't have standards, and you don't put your standards in writing and codify them as rules, and commit yourself to basically the rule of law and the rules of safety, then yeah, what you do falls quickly into disrepute. People are not going to want to come to you. And for God's sake, they're not going to want to send their children to be taught by you.
You know, there's a difference. I see a lot of friends of mine that are police officers. They're all into the martial arts. They're all this and that. I was talking to one of them, and he says, Paul, he's training in one of the cities here in Texas. He's out of Arlington. He goes, I just joined a kickboxing gym, and I have my first fight. And I go, under what sanctioning body? And he goes, oh, well, we have a fight, and it's going to be over here at this gym, and blah, 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 blah. And sure enough, ended up getting his arm kicked in, and was messed up with the elbow now, and this and this. And then all of a sudden, I told him, was it a fight? Who sanctioned it? No, they were just meeting and having fights, and they were paying the person, and no officials, no anything else. And I said,
it's a round ring fight.
I said, you're a peace officer, and you're allowing this to occur?
Illegal.
here in the state, I've seen certain, when we were very highly involved with in the past with USA Savat and the boxing commission. I remember one time I got a call that there was a MMA competition in a small town called Cotula, which is about 60 miles from here. And I said, well, I don't know, who's doing the MMA over there? Do they have it? Maybe they have it on the fairgrounds or not. And they said, can you go check it out? And I said, I won't be here, at that time. And he goes, well, don't worry about it. We'll send the Department of Public Safety over there. That's what they do. They will send the Department of Public Safety to make sure that you're doing it correctly. And sure enough, they were having an MMA competition, which was not sanctioned by the state. At that particular time, there was no sanctioning body for MMA. So it fell underneath the boxing commission, which it still does now.
So how does it work in Texas generally? If there is a national sanctioning body?
If it's amateur, there has to be a governing body. If it's professional, it's mandated strictly by the state commission.
And what if it's an amateur event and there is no sanctioning body? How does Texas handle that?
The person has to follow strict guidelines with insurances, with rules and regulations, and so
okay.
So that's what happens. The problem with national governing bodies, it has to be accepted by the U.S. Olympic Committee. Okay, and that's the problem that happens in the world with Savat. USA Savat is recognized underneath the United States Olympic Committee, but it is not an official sanctioning body of the United States Olympic Committee. Let me tell you why. The problem is that the International Federation of Savat has to be recognized by the International Olympic Committee. And then they have to decide whether they're professional or amateur status.
Can't be both.
They can't be both. So the International Federation of Savat is both. It's both a professional entity as well as an amateur entity.
Right.
So here in the United States, USA Savat cannot become a member of the International Federation of Savat because of that reasoning. And so the USA Olympic Committee will hold that against us because the International Federation is not. Understand? So that's what happens. So people say, well, the basketball stars are all professionals.
Right.
Yes, but that National Olympic Committee has recognized a professional status. So those athletes can be professional.
It sounded kind of funny how the International and U.S. Olympic Committee gives certain sports a mulligan, like how the Canadian Olympic hockey team can comprise 3 clubs of the NHL, how the Americans can put forth the dream team of Jordan, Pippen, all these guys who are, have multiple NBA rings and still call it an amateur event. And there's not a single player who's an NCAA collegiate player on it. Boggles my mind how they can engineer these exceptions.
Well, they engineer those because the International Olympic Committee has accepted that federation and mandates them. So that's just the way it is.
But by that same token, the Philippines can't field an Olympic boxing team with Manny Pacquiao as the captain. We can't have you know,
because the International Boxing Commission, Commission Federation actually, is a amateur entity,
mm,
specified as an amateur entity.
right.
And what happens with the International Savate Federation, it's both. They have to stop either paying or become fully amateur, and they're not. They're doing both, and a lot of those federations are doing both.
True.
The French Federation is doing both.
They do give
And-
stipends.
And until you realize that, then you cannot partake in events like that. Well, you know.
With respect to Olympic competition, I don't know if you want to go into this very deeply, but in 1924, in the Paris Olympics, Savate, boxe française kickboxing competition happened as a demonstration sport, and you later told me that cane fencing was also there as a demonstration sport. Now, I've seen it on many, the French websites, but I couldn't find any record of it myself when I look up the Olympic events. So I guess demonstration doesn't mean an actual competition.
Actually, boxe française, not savate, boxe française.
Boxe française. French
at that-
boxing and savate were two different things.
back at that era. Boxe française was an Olympic sport. Was one of the first 14 Olympic sports that was produced by Jean-Pierre Coubertin. And it wasn't. It was all the way up to the 34 Olympic in Berlin.
36.
So when it was played over there with, you might be right.
It was
and
the
with
Nazi Olympics.
The Nazi Olympics, and so that was the last time it was played. And the trainer of that was a professor whose name was Paul Boucher, and I have his book at. He was the actual trainer of the French team and what they did and all that good stuff. It's kind of interesting because. At that particular time, you had England had some boxe française, you had Belgium, Italy, Germany, of course, and of course France. So it was kind of interesting to have. Now they're trying to push this Olympic coming in because it's going
Right.
to be
In Paris in 2024. What do you think about that?
Again-
any rumblings from the French International Federation?
they're all happy-go-lucky trying to put it inside, and this is what I tell them to do. Understand is that they have to decide what their international board is going to be. They have to understand what the actual body of what they have done in the last 3 decades, 4 decades. And a lot of people do not understand the last 3 decades has really been comprised of the French going to a country, doing a seminar, leaving, and all of a sudden leaving those practitioners there. And then they'll come back and they say, that's the federation or so-and-so, and that's the federation of so-and-so. They've never gone back there in years. So there is actual no federations. There's no actual governing bodies. There's some. Italy is one, Spain is one, Germany is one, Russia, Croatia, France, and
Britain
Belgium.
and Ireland also have them.
But federations that are accepted by their national Olympic board. And if they're accepted by the National Olympic Committee, then that's one thing.
Right.
Okay? So none of them are accepted by the National Olympic Committee except the ones that I just mentioned. Russia,
Good point.
Croatia, Italy, Belgium, France, and Spain. The rest of them are entities that exist, but they're not accepted by their own National Olympic Committee. So until you get 72 countries, then we can start talking about sports inside
Good
the
point.
Olympic Committee.
What it's the point I made before. You cannot create a sport on the head of a pin. The Handball Federation has more members than the International Savate Federation. Okay.
When I was in France at that particular time, and I was studying in France, the French Federation had 930,000 participants. USA Boxing here has 3 million.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
3 million, that's
so,
a city the size of
Yeah,
Chicago
understand.
or Dallas or Phoenix.
So when you compare numbers, it's not there. Now, when I went back there in 2012, they had about 180,000. So it's going down instead of going up. What's going on with Savate is that they need to understand what they want out of the sport. Is the sport going to become professional or is the sport going to become amateur? If you're going to have both, you need exactly 2 different associations within France, and they don't want to give that up.
That's too bad. I mean, you could have interlocking directorates, just have the same board of people sitting on the professional and the amateur association, just make them two entities. And they just don't want to do that. I guess they get paid for being in the French Federation by the Ministry of Sports, but if they went professional, then they'd have to rely on their own. Yeah. And another thing is, I've noticed, unlike other martial arts, like the Japanese martial arts, the Chinese martial arts, the Philippine martial arts, even the Indonesian martial arts, the French have never been what I call evangelical about spreading their martial art. That is, Japanese instructors have come over here, opened up dojos. Korean instructors come over here. And that's what made Taekwondo the world's most popular sport. The difference between Savate and Taekwondo as demonstration sports is that the first time Savate was a demonstration sport in 1924, most of the world never heard of it. Fast forward 100 years, 2024, most of the world will still have never heard of it. You have Taekwondo in the Olympics in 1988 as a demonstration sport, okay? 4 years later, in 92, it's an official sport. And the same thing happened with judo, okay? 1964, demonstration sport. By 1968, Mexico City, it was a regular sport. But before it was even a demonstration sport, judo and Taekwondo already had a mass following and did so for decades, okay? Which from Taekwondo, it's pretty amazing because it is pretty much formulated after the Korean War. So basically in the 60s. So
you know,
in about 20 years, they generated such a massive following because Korean instructors were going everywhere. They're churning these guys out of places like the Kukikwan in Seoul and sending them all over the world. You don't see the French Federation churning out instructors and sending them to US, to Canada, to other parts of Europe, South America. It's not happening. It never has, and it never did.
What occurs is they'll send a team to a nation. They'll do a seminar, and they'll leave 2-3 years later. They might come back. If not, they just all of a sudden the ones that are left behind start doing whatever Savate has done, and I've named that contemporary Savate. Okay, and they do whatever they want. They start assuming history, traditions, techniques, and they have an assumption made up of nonsense into a martial art that's there. That's why people do not really respect it. You know, we have a school in Brazil, and we have several schools. Actually, we have 4 schools in Brazil. We just finished making a state federation over there, and we're making a confederation over there. It's time consuming, and it takes money, and it takes people that are dedicated to go inside and understand it. There is Savate in Brazil. There is Box Francis Savate over there. You know, was the first person that took it over there was Bertrand Socor, which was a great champion. He passed away now. He was a dear friend of mine, you know, and Bertrand left certain people. Now you have another gentleman over there by the name of De Forest, which I know very well. And all of a sudden now you have more professors of Savate in Brazil than the history of Savate in France since its creation of 1890. So they, you know, Savate means shoe, folks. Savate means shoe in Old French, meaning that I'm using my shoe as a weapon. In the terms of a combative art, I'm going to learn how to kick you with my shoe as a weapon to be able to destruct the person that's attacking me with ease. Different than the other martial arts. It's an occidental art. It's a martial art that is very in your face when it needs to be, and it's also a martial art that carries a lot of banter behind it. But with that said, when people go to martial arts places and they say we're doing Savate and the person's barefooted, and Savate means shoe, well, you understand where that person learned it from.
Right.
Walk
it's
out,
like
turn
saying,
around, and walk out.
I run a swim school, but I got no
no
pool and no water,
Yeah.
and nobody ever gets wet.
So you're gonna, yeah, that's exactly that's been going on over there. We have a craze here in the United States with everybody wants to be an instructor, but nobody wants to train to be one. You have instructors out there that should not be teaching, but are teaching. Everybody has a right to do that. It separates they get separated when competitions come of age. They get separated when mandates of rules and regulation occur, and for the protection of the individuals. USA Savat is one of the only organizations, as well as USA Boxing and I believe USA Judo and USA Wrestling, where the coach, the instructor, has to have a background check. A lot of martial arts out there don't have a background check. They have no criminal record, and then you're right now you're having a lot of issues with child molestation with a lot of martial arts schools that are going out there here in Texas and across the United States.
Not only that, it's not just martial arts. Unfortunately, there's two big cases up in Chicago metro area in the last 3 years or so. USA Gymnastics, two clubs, and when I say USA Gymnastics, serious clubs that are training to put people into NCAA collegiate programs and to be in Olympic contention for the various gymnastic sports. And there was two very high-profile cases of male instructors who were sexual predators, and they were started this by looking at 12 and 14-year-old girls. Man, I mean,
no, you got sickles.
Sick.
So you need to
Chomos
understand.
And pedos.
you need to understand that we need to protect everybody that comes in, and we need to understand how we're going to regulate that to do so. Anybody in the United States can open up a school. You got folks out there that open up a school. They teach anywhere they want to teach, whether it's a park, or whether it's a garage, or whether it's a storefront. And they can come up with a story that they were taught by a monk that was their next door neighbor, that was very, very recluse, and he was the only one that learned these traditions, and he passed them on to you, and you're the only one that knows it, and blah, 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 blah. This happens every day across every city, across the world. So let's just talk about the United States. So in the United States, you have these guys out there. I call them jamokes. You have all these jamokes out there teaching, okay? And they're teaching a nonsense art to people that do not understand what martial arts really is. They're entrusting their faith onto you, and they're being fraudulently played with, okay? And that is wrong. And when you go in there and you have a guy that's 24 years old and he says that he's a grandmaster or something, folks, turn around.
Don't walk away, run.
Martial arts in general have changed in how people were taking to the arts, okay? I was 6 years old and I got my butt kicked, and my dad took me to my uncle and he said, teach him. And that's how I got involved with the martial arts. That's how I got my road in pugilism. I have a lot of kids that way, that their father brings them in and they said, teach him. He's getting. So you have to understand why people are coming into you. People are coming into you for a need. If folks want to come in there and they want to say, I'm coming in there to get on a diet, so I want to come into martial arts and lose weight, well, good luck. It's not going to happen.
It's not Jenny Craig, man.
You know what I'm saying, and you know that very well. And you're only going to lose weight if you're in a serious diet and you're in a competition,
right,
and you're training for competition, and you have to make weight.
Right.
Remember, diet makes you lose weight, okay? So it's what you eat. So if you're eating 4 corn tortillas and flour tortillas for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're not going to lose weight. You can spin all you want.
I don't care what exercise program you're in. Any responsible trainer, personal trainer, physical trainer, martial art or boxing trainer will tell you this: you cannot exercise your way out of a bad diet, and that's what I tell my patients as well.
And so if you want to lose weight, go to a dietitian. Go to a place that specializes in that.
Absolutely.
If you want to learn how to fight, go to a school that specializes into that. If you want to learn how to throw a punch correctly, go to the people that throw how to punch and kick correctly. And people do not understand that. Not every martial art has weapons. Not every martial art is a fighting martial art. Some martial arts are self-defense martial arts. But can martial arts give you something? Yes, every single one can give you a set to a goal.
Absolutely.
Okay, and once you start placing those goals and you can start moving forward, then you're doing something positive with regardless of the martial art that you're training in. But go to the people that know what the martial art is. Um, we were talking about yesterday, and we ran into some ladies that I've known them, and some of them are teachers, and they said, "Hey, Paul, I'm glad that you're here." And one of them says, "I'm doing Tai Chi." I go, "Man, really?" And she goes, "We're learning Bagua as well." I go, "Wow, where, who, how here?" Because Laredo, when did Tai Chi come of age, and when did Bagua come of age? And I said, "Okay, cool. Who's teaching it?" And when they told me the person's name, and I said, "When did he learn Tai Chi?" Guy never, unless he picked it up from YouTube. But that's
You
basic
become a genius.
You
with
become a
YouTube.
genius with YouTube. So
Yeah.
I guess you can learn everything out of YouTube. But that's just the way it is. And
You're gonna put brain surgery on YouTube one of these days.
yeah, it probably already has it, because I looked up right there the other day. I looked up to see if you can make a rocket from my son, and it tells you how to make a rocket in YouTube, and it has everything.
Build your own atomic bomb. All right.
But what happens is, what I'm proud of USA Savat and what it's happened since the past is we've had great people that we've surrounded ourselves with. We've had great athletes in the beginning. Some of them, remember, competing in competition is a young man's sport. Okay? And, there's going to come a time and age that the younger, more hungry, more dedicated, it's going to beat you. Okay? Under the set of rules.
The problem is you keep getting older and your competition keeps getting younger.
And that's what happens. And what happens is that a lot of folks do not understand that, and they continue competing, and then all of a sudden, they lose. And well, there's always something around the sport game that you can become an official, become a coach, become everything else, or do a little bit of everything. And it's interesting. But what I'm trying to get at, we had great athletes that are now become just like you. You became, you're a lieutenant commander. Not many people do that. We had others that just became a dentist, others that became lawyers, others that became engineers. One of them's a full bird, and we're very proud of those champions that came in from the early part of USA Savat. So we've done very great. So at least we're in a step in the good direction. But what I say is this: we passed it underneath the Department of Texas licensing regulations, which is probably one of the strictest in the nation.
If not the strictest.
And we've tried passing it with others that basically say, if you all do it in Texas, and we know Commissioner Dickey Cole, and we can do it here as a provisional sport once things get going, like in Illinois at that particular time, Maryland at one particular time, California. And the other stuff that we have is that we've created pockets of committees. We formed a committee that's known as the World Pugilist Hall of Fame for the preservation of the history of the martial arts, which is underneath USA Savat. We've started the Gentlemen's Stick Fighting Coalition, which has gathered not only the French martial arts, but also the Filipino martial arts and any other martial arts that can use weapons that can come in a fellowship type of arena, which is growing. And like tomorrow we'll have our third annual, and we have folks from all throughout Texas. We have women now competing, which has shown us a different view, because we thought it was going to take longer, and on the third year now we have women. And again, a lot of people do not understand that those competing tomorrow are the actual pioneers of this sport. You have to hands up for them.
You have to start somewhere.
And a lot of folks don't understand that, because this is the only organization that brings in people from other cultures together. Yeah, the Filipinos, WCAF and everything have, it's a Filipino martial arts, but they don't only Filipino martial arts can go in it.
Right.
And that's the difference.
Okay.
What a lot of folks don't know that our lieutenant commander, has become the president of USA Savat. And what goals do you have for this upcoming 2 years?
Well, since USA Savat is a sporting organization, in order to grow it, you have to have events. You really do. So even if you do not have enough people in your own club to have events, you have to, as we said before, you have to start somewhere. Probably the easier of the two types of events these days, given the circumstances, to host would be a gentleman's stick fighting coalition type of event, because the costs are lower. When you generate a following, you can reach a tipping point whereby you can afford to have other events like the kick punch events, the fighting events. Again, there's going to be more people who are going to want to do the ASO, the semi-contact, the light contact event, than there will be to do the combat, the full contact event. So if you have a big enough club, you have to, often if you have competitive people, you have to send them to the events that are. So you train them for boxing, you train them for karate or taekwondo events, and they can distinguish themselves doing that, because we kick like similar to what they do, and our punches are boxing punches. But I would like to see people distinguish themselves in our events. Okay,
They will.
USA Savat, I believe, is the best product out there for competition because of its high standards of the rules. There hasn't been a lot of USA Savat events outside of Texas. Why? Because, as I said before, you have to love this stuff, okay? Because if you're in this for the money, okay, just get a job on Wall Street or LaSalle Street in Chicago. You're obviously in the wrong business, okay? You're probably going to lose money on this event, on these types of things. You're probably going to learn every time you put on an event how to make it better, okay? But your events, you have to treat them like, like an investment in marketing and advertising to generate interest. Ultimately, that interest will come back in the form of new members, dues-paying, tuition-paying members for your club. And again, that builds on itself. They want something to do. You train them for an event. You generate interest. You generate enthusiasm. You get people to do things that they didn't think they could do, but you show them that they can.
Folks, we're looking at, especially you guys out there that are stick fighters out there, like Tim and Angelo and a couple of guys that I know are watching here. Hey, Danny. Hopefully you can go tomorrow, Danny. And we're going to try to shoot for a Illinois stick fighting championship next season. Folks, USA Savat season is from January to December, and it flips over every year. Okay, it doesn't go with the International Guild season, which the Guild season is September to July every year, and it's a total different. That's a collegiate year, and we run a physical year. Okay, they're totally two different entities. And so those that are in USA Savat, we will have one in Chicago. That make sure that we will have one there. And I know that with Guru Tim McFardridge, who will be here tomorrow, who's the state director, we're looking at having one in Waco in the near future, whether August or September. So little by little, it's growing. I know Larry Orduño and Grandmaster Larry Orduño and Grandmaster Falco from Houston, which they're coming here tomorrow. They are also looking to have one in the Houston area in the upcoming season, which is neat to have, So things are going to change, but I think it's going to grow a little bit more, and I think it's something fun because not only kids are doing it, teens are doing it, women are doing it,
right.
Men are doing it. There's novice divisions now for men where we didn't have it before. There's 3 different weight classes for men that we didn't have before. So things are growing. Things are changing. People say, "Oh, how come we don't have men and women. Listen, there's a rule in the state of Texas, and there's a rule in many combative sports. You cannot compete men with women. Physically, you can't, and that's just the way it is. Until the state's licensing boards say we can, then everybody else can. So, sorry to burst your bubbles. We're just following the rules of the state, the laws of the land. That's just the way it is.
Anybody who thinks that, you know, a 130-pound, 135-pound man is going to be outmatched against, say, Ronda Rousey, not going to happen. If he is a decent professional MMA fighter, he's still a man. It's a different set of musculature. It's going to put one of those fighters, usually the female, at a decided disadvantage.
And we're not saying that there's not great female fighters out there, because there's tremendous
phenomenal. I love following the women's MMA.
So, you know, so please do not get us wrong. It's just, we're just following rules that occur. It's just like the same thing. We cannot compete a child under 14 years old with a 24-year-old man. Same things. The same thing occurs. Okay. There's age brackets and age limits and so on.
It's all about fair play, because if you start compromising on that, then you're throwing away your safety protocols, and that shouldn't be acceptable.
Now, for tomorrow, folks, it's at the Northwest Boys and Girls Club, which is on Santa Maria. Fighters need to get there between 8 to 9. The event starts at 10. Registration finishes at 9 exactly. So please understand that. We have some that are pre-registered. We have some that are calling in today and registering in. So tonight we have a seconds and an officials workshop, which is going to be at 220 West Hillside Road. And it's going to be led by the three of us. It's going to be myself, Lieutenant Commander, and as well as Guru Tim, which we're going to be leading that. So anybody that wishes to become an official or a second, feel free. That's the workshop that you all need. Tomorrow, doors open at 10. Okay, it starts at 10. Expected to go on to about 4, 5 at the latest. It's fast. It's nice to watch. It's energetic, and let's just have some good fun. All right. Until next time, peace. You guys stop texting and driving, and be careful with all the bike riders out there in the streets of Laredo. All right. Till next time.